I'm back! Surprise! I'm back for another season. Remember when I told you I was coming back in February? Now it's April, and for several times I kept changing my biography to say back in February, back in March. But now it's April and I'm back. Welcome to season 2 of Anyhow Anyway, a podcast by Summer England. We do all things cozy, chaos, bookish, whimsical, and everything in between. What's in store for season 2? Well, we're going to be talking about how to curate whimsy in your everyday life, okay? We're going to be talking about books. We're going to be talking about writing. Oh, and by the way, my book is out on shelves. My little bitty book is out on shelves. You can go into Barnes & Noble raw and go to the clerk and be like, do you have The Impossible Garden of Clara Thorne out? And they may just say yes. Or they may be like, sorry, we sold out. We're going to have to restock. Okay? That's season 2. And there's more coming. That's very much where we are at with season 2 of Anyhow Anyway. After a 4-month hiatus, after an academic semester of not being back on the radio waves, well, I'm back now. And what has brought me back? What has brought me out of my cocoon? Well, spring is here. My book is out. My mental health is kind of climbing back up from the depths, because I gotta say that maybe I plummeted myself into something. And honestly, the winter time, especially January, February, it's sort of like the luteal phase of my life, because I always forget that it's gonna happen. And then it's there, and I think to myself, I have never felt this bad before. Something is wrong. I try to diagnose myself. I'm like, maybe I have some brain-eating amoeba, or maybe I have brain-eating cancer, because this is where my mental health is at, is thinking those things, is suspecting those things. Anyhow, I have so many updates for you all, okay? First and foremost, the neighbor and I are back together. Yeah. So that happened. Anyway. Secondly, The Impossible Garden of Clara Thorne is out. It is out. I'm going to do probably multiple podcast episodes of what it's been like to market a book, what it's been like leading up to a book launch, what it's been like as an autistic person having to be forced to have object permanence with something that I have done when that is not my strong suit, and how that has felt. I also finished 2 drafts of different novels. One is my Shakespearean academic romance. Got feedback on that from my lovely beta reader and also my agent, and I'm going back to rewrite that and restructure and stuff. And then I also finished my draft for The Wild West Meets the Mummy Sapphic Romantasy that I'm writing. And I got a lot of feedback from that. Sometimes some of it was helpful, some of it wasn't, just because that's like what happens with beta readers. Not every story is for everyone. And so I'm going back and I'm tweaking some things. But it's been a big old writing year. I mean, writing 2 novels while one is coming out is its own thing. And as always, when I am writing something and when I'm in that headspace, I am thinking of other stories. It's like when you look at the sky and you try to take all of the stars in at once, you can't. It just is like goop up there. If you look at one star, then the ones around them become more clear. And that's what's happened. So I have a compendium of projects. I have so many different things that are going on. I have so many different irons in the fire. Oh, also, okay, one of the reasons why I was delayed, okay? One of the reasons. I would say the secondary, tertiary, and then the undercurrent, the biggest one is going to be me, because I kept forgetting that it was an option. I kept forgetting I had a podcast. My mental health wasn't great. Everything was dark. I was depressed. I was burnt out. I was performing. I still am. And that's just what happens in the winter, okay? It doesn't matter how much vitamin D I get or how many $27.99 lights I get off of Amazon. It just is what it is, okay? I'm an earth sign through and through. When the earth goes to sleep, I go to sleep. My soul comes back out in the spring, and it's very renewal. It's very beautiful. Lots of new ideas flowing. It's just what has to be what happens. Anyhow, so I have done a lot of updates to the Whimsy house, okay? The Whimsy house this is her makeover year, all right? Last year, I felt like I was putting Band-Aids aesthetically on things because I didn't really have the funds to be able to overhaul parts of the house, and nor did I have the expertise to even begin to do that. And look, I'm not going to get a power tool. That's the last thing no, I'm not going to be doing that. Not in this economy. Not in this economy. I want all my fingers. I want all my toes. Anyhow, I switched office spaces and I had big plans, y'all. Okay. When I gave you my last episode in December, I said, I'll see you in January, February, whatever I promised you, whatever train that left the station months and months ago. Any of you have abandonment issues? Sorry for bringing those up. Okay, back to it. So I have this tiny little nook off of what used to be my office. And my office was an unnecessarily large room, and I, as an autistic neurodivergent person, like to be in a cocoon, okay? I like to be in an enclosed space by myself, okay? I want to be surrounded by my little things in a very clean, curated, cozy chaos, okay? I move into this tiny, I think it was the trunk room in the original iteration of the house, because my house is from 1940. It was either a cradle room or a trunk room. Anyhow, I moved my office in here. I paint it. You can actually see my office renovation on Instagram and TikTok, okay? It's not really a renovation. I just sort of painted the walls and I put some peel and stick tiles down over the disgusting laminate that's here. And I had these big plans because there's gonna be a video aspect to this podcast. I'm not gonna promise you a timeline on that, but I got this space set up because I wanted it to be my studio, because I have this podcast. I also am doing more interviews because fame. Just kidding. Because books come out and people like to interview about them. And I wanted to have a nice space with a nice background and a place that I can just close off and have all the video things. So I had the video things, right? We're in January. I had the video stuff. I have my tripod. I have a camera. I have everything set up. I got a new bookshelf. I set it up all cute like. Everything was ready. And then, recall back, we're going back a few months ago. Are you still with me? I always, look, I'm linked in with Mother Nature. All right? She and I have a deal. It's not that she necessarily likes me, but we're tapped in. I have told people ever since the beginning of last year, in the year of our Lord 2025, that this coming winter, was going to be the longest and hardest for this area that we've had in a long time. There was something in the air telling me so, okay? Fast forward to January, and I get this office ready. Immediately, we have Snowmageddon. It's a ton of snow. It is a ton of ice. But more than that, we're in sub-zero temperatures for an extended period of time. Everybody's pipes are freezing, okay? My washer machine absolutely poops out. We have to get the wall cut out. My little office space that I have created, well, it's not heated. So I go into there and I can see my breath. And I think to myself, eventually it's gonna warm up enough that I'll be able to be in here without seeing my breath. It's not gonna be 38 degrees in a room in my house. Yeah, well, we had those types of temperatures, and I live in zone 7A/7B. So for the most part, save for maybe 2 or 3 weeks per our extreme seasons, so summer, winter, we have a pretty mild climate. It's really gorgeous weather in the Shenandoah Valley. That cold, that intense type of cold, I have never experienced before in my life. It was a long, hard winter, to the point where I had to park my car down in a covered garage downtown. So if we wanted to go to the grocery store, my kiddo and I would have to put on layers and layers of clothes, obviously, and snow pants, all this stuff, walk in the middle of the road because the ice didn't melt for weeks and weeks and weeks. Even when it did melt, it wasn't all the way, and then it kept refreezing. It was a mess. And I mean, God bless our tiny little town. I don't know what happened with the salt trucks, but it got so cold that the salt froze in the salt trucks. And so it was just a 1-ton block of salt. It was drama. It was drama. You should have seen our downtown Facebook page during that time. Absolutely ripping to shreds our downtown association, whoever runs the people who go out with their snowplows. So we basically, all that to say, I did not finish the rest of my thought. Okay. So my kiddo and I would have to go, we would just have to walk, a quarter of a mile or more to our car and go to the store nearest to us that had the least amount of obstacles in the way, do as many groceries as we could that I could carry by myself, and then treacherously walk back it was just ice. It was like we were walking on ice. And as much as we tried to prepare for it, there's a certain level of extended periods of weather in which you are not, you're just not prepped for. Like, there's just some clothing things that we don't have because we don't really live in that climate. And, because we're poking holes in the ozone because we're under a tyrannic monster, that's going to probably happen again and again. All that to say is that was a major reason why I got delayed at the beginning of the year, is because the space that I set up, my little studio, everything was not usable for honestly like 4 to 6 weeks. Now, after that, what's my excuse? What did you ask what my excuse was? Yeah, so that's gonna be that my ADHD sort of hit an all-time high, and if I wasn't walking past my mic all the time, I forgot that I had a podcast. And it wasn't until I was getting messages from followers being like, hey, I know that you're really busy right now, I just really miss your podcast, that I would remember that I had one. So my deepest apologies. I was really busy. I hope that the fruits of my labor at some point will assuage the absence that I have bequeathed unto you all. Now, on to exciting things, is that The Impossible Garden of Clairithorn is out. And it has been a whirlwind experience, and visceral and kinetic, and I feel like I'm experiencing life in this technicolor way, and I don't think I'm ever going to get over the absolute awe I feel that my name is in bookstores. I cannot believe that. And you know how I know that I will never get over that is that I still can't. And I did this on my Instagram close friend story, okay? I posted this already. I cannot get over the fact that as an adult I can walk in the street and that I have free will. And I think that's one of the reasons why in the second season of Anyhow Anyway, I really do want to focus on curating whimsy in your own life, because we're adults. We're adults. Even if we are working, even if we have whatever life demands of us, we can still curate moments of exceptional whimsy just out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? Why do we not all have button jars? Why are we not all going outside and collecting bits and pieces of trash and then using them to make a little springtime Beltane wreath? Do you know what I mean? Like, these are options that we have. Our life can be a fantasy. And I think I'm feeling so pulled towards that right now because it feels very much that we are in an extremity of American human history right now. And there is so much sorrow and horror. And I don't want to ever step away from that and just not engage with those headlines, not engage with those topics, because I just don't. I want to make sure that I'm doing my due diligence of being a citizen and being in the know. And even if I can't necessarily do anything about it at a large scale, what can I do in my local community? What can I talk to? What can I tell my kiddo about that? Because he's the next generation and he's also a white male. And so making sure that I'm engaging with content, but also making sure that my personal life has a hedge of protection around it that is impenetrable in a lot of ways from what horrors are going on at a mass scale. No one can take my hope away. No one can take my whimsy away unless I'm dead, at which point I'll come back and haunt. You know what I'm talking about? And so in the second season, I think, why I'm so excited for the content, and I'm so excited to talk about books, and I'm so excited about all of that. And I never want to come off in a way that I am ignoring what's going on at all. I completely I'm completely acknowledging, I mean, my goodness, the things that happened this at the beginning of this year with frozen water. You know what I'm saying? I don't know what censorship is going on these days, but you know what I'm talking about. It's sort of like another level. And my intention to bring cozy stories or love stories into the world and to have that whimsy in our lives is coming from that point of, you know, in this economy, all we've got is the thrifted little madams that we get around and we plant inside of our garden. And sometimes it's the only pretty thing we're going to look at that day. And I think that's really important, though. I think that is agency. And anyhow, I went down that rabbit hole, but that's where it's coming from. So second season is going to be a lot of whimsy. Okay. First season, I'm getting on my feet, right? This is, I mean, I don't know what the first season encapsulation would be other than Cozy Chaos, which is what the Anyhow Anyway podcast is going to be. But the longer that this podcast happens, I want to make sure that we're adding some new stuff in there. Okay. We're going to have themes. We're going to have chapters because this is, you know, a literary bookish podcast as much as it is that you perverts want to know stuff about me. All right. All right. Now, guess what I got to do? I got to go to this adorable bookstore, Fountain Bookstore, in Richmond, Virginia, and I signed over 250 copies of The Impossible Garden of Claire Thorne. Now, that meant more to me than anything could have ever meant to me because you know I'm an indie bookshop girl. You know I think that booksellers make this world go round. They are the lifeblood. They are the lifeblood of books, and if you're an author, you want to be friends with booksellers and know how important they are because your book isn't always going to be on the feature table. You know, it's not going to be the first thing people see. At some point, probably in the near future, because the market, I mean, we have pub days every single Tuesday. Your book is going to be just, they're going to be able to see the spine and they're going to have to look for your name. And it's up to your ability to curate relationships with booksellers and also your agent. Like there's multiple things that go into it, but I think as an author, it is so important for us to remember that yes, we write the stories, but after that, there's a whole other level of ensuring that these stories have stewards, and that steward is not you anymore. It is booksellers. And a bookseller changed my life and inadvertently, whether I knew them or not. But my favorite book in the entire world is The Little Paris Bookshop by Nina George. And it's also one of the reasons why I don't give a flying hoot about Goodreads, because on The Little Paris Bookshop on Goodreads is like a 3.5, which I guess is low. I don't care. It's my favorite book in the whole world. And a bookseller was the person who sold it to me and was able to tap into what I like and what I was looking for. And it had been out for a while. This wasn't a new title. It was just a title that she knew. And anyways, so I go to Fountain Bookstore, and even getting, like 15 to 20 copies for an indie bookstore, I didn't know what to expect, honestly. I was like, I feel like 50 orders from this indie bookshop is going to be like, that's the number I'm going to shoot for. Of course I would like more, but I just want to, I don't know what to expect. I'm a debut author. I don't know what's going to happen. So when I found out how the orders were going, and then when I got there and there were that many copies left and more people were putting in orders for a single indie bookshop, that made my heart swell and inside of my chest, that the people who follow me, even if they don't live in Richmond, Virginia, and they have not read my stuff, like you might be a fan of me, but I still need to build my readership and make sure that I'm providing stories for people and they want them. And so to just walk into the indie shop and I got to talk to a bookseller, I just had her to myself for the entire time that I was signing books. Also, I did not practice my autograph before I got there. I've autographed stuff before because I'm an actor in a small town, a professional actor, and have been for half a decade now. So like I've done autographs before. I just didn't think about it. And so for a few of you who got my last, 3 books out of the 250 that I signed in a couple of hours, I look like I write prescriptions for a living. It really lost its whimsiness, but a few of you, I gave you special chaos signage. So I have some personalized letter. Every single letter in there that I wrote, if some of you asked for it, was its own kind of thing. So if any of you are listening to this podcast and you got one of those personalized copies, let me know in the comments which one you got, because they will be seared onto my memory forever. You will always be the first copies of books that I ever signed in my life. And it just meant a lot that it was supporting an indie store. It was supporting an indie store that's extremely inclusive, and I just makes my heart so happy. And then the second thing that made me the happiest in the world was all of the people around America telling me the wait lists at libraries. There was somebody who told me that at Brooklyn, the day it came out, it already had a 12-week wait list, and there are other places with 6 weeks or 10 weeks, and people on Libby, and it just means the world to me. And as cool as it is, because I found out also that the day it came out, it popped up to number 15 in all of Cozy Fantasy, which is, a huge deal, because number 15 at that time was hanging out with, Sangu Mandana and Travis Baldry and Sarah Beth Durst, and these people whose books have been out for a really long time, or, have a few years of reviews behind them. And there was The Impossible Garden hanging out with them. And I was so happy about that. But that Amazon is what Amazon is. And I'm glad, because from like a socioeconomic standpoint, I totally understand why people would opt for that. And I, get books into readers' hands. But for those of you who are able to do through an indie shop or to request it through the library, it's sort of a happiness fulfillment level that I can't really put into words, because it so deeply meets what my core ethics are as a reader and a writer. And it just, to see everybody support the book through that way has really changed my life in a lot of ways, which is very mushy. But to be whimsy forward, I think the key to be whimsy forward in a lot of ways is to continue to have gratitude, even in the highest moments of success, in the highest moments of wins, because it's easy to let your own success be a metric for how you might fail later, if that makes sense, of will I ever get this type of height again? Will I ever have anything be this successful or this good, or when will the bad times come? But I've really tried, and I think because I'm a perfectionist, because of the way that my brain works, because I'm so goal oriented and I'm always thinking of the next steps, I don't like slowing down ever. Sometimes I can lean into that, but I've really taken this week in particular to be unendingly grateful for the support people have showed for this book launch and for the story, and to indie stores and libraries, which has been amazing. On that note, if you don't have your copy of Impossible Garden yet, request it from your local bookstore, request it from your library, whatever, tag me. I really want to see it in the airports. I've heard people have been getting it from airports. I've yet to see a picture of it. I would love to see a picture of my book in Hudson News. Even though I am about as scared as you can get to be a flyer, I think it is so cool that my book is in the airport. That's crazy. But if you don't have a copy yet and you're an audiobook person, I cannot recommend the audiobook enough. And I know that sounds so silly because I wrote the book, but Frankie Porter, the person who Frankie narrates on Instagram, she did such an amazing job. The ownership of the first person POV and the clarity and the personalization and the artistic license that she took gave my actor heart and my writer heart and my reader heart such immense joy. And I've enjoyed listening to the book because I get to viscerally understand somebody's take of the book that's not just how I have read it. And it's truly fantastic. It's so cozy. Her accents are fantastic. Her everything that she does is just a warm cup of tea, and I cannot recommend it enough. Please, if you haven't, go get it on Audible. Go get it. It's on request for a lot of Libby. Not every Libby has it that I know of. You can also do Libro FM. If you're not familiar with that, that's an app that is an audiobook app, but you can choose which indie bookstore that the purchase of the book goes to. So wherever you get audiobooks, Impossible Garden is going to be there. And I cannot recommend it enough. I really want to get those audiobook numbers up because Frankie narrates deserves the world, and she should narrate every cozy fantasy from now on. And oh my gosh, I'm so pleased with it. It's just been really, really fantastic. Other than book things, which really my life is just book stuff at this point. It has been so much writing all the time. My writing routine has been the best it's ever been. And part of that was because I'm on deadline, but it also is because when I was drafting Clara Thorne, I was learning so much about myself as a long form writer. And I'd only ever written like a master's thesis. I've written academic papers. I've written plenty of research papers. I'd always taken writing courses. The first publication I ever did was my thesis. And so I have experience writing in that way, but being able to know what helps me as a writer is something that actually Brandon Sanderson talks about a lot, because I started listening to any podcast that featured him only because he's so prolific. And I really enjoy how when people talk about their writing routines. Because I think it helps sort of take away the kind of hazy muse idea around creativity, because at the end of the day, something that I've learned through this especially is creativity is a muscle. The more I work it, the more ideas I have, and the more those ideas I am able to put them into more efficient versions of themselves. I'm able to edit more quickly. I'm able to see where I need to edit. And with Clara Thorne, it was just head in the water. I got up every day at 6 a.m. I wrote for 6 hours, and I was learning so much all the time. And this go round, I'd already had a pretty consistent writing routine, but this just really amped up the consistency. And I focus way less on word count now, because I know myself as a writer is that I overwrite. I have a tendency to linger unnecessarily. I just need to get to the point. Even though I do enjoy that in books. I really like when pacing is unexpected to me. That's what I enjoy the most. Anyhow, I have been able to write every day, and now it's just part of what I do. Even as soon as I finished the draft of my Wild West Meets the Mummy Sapphic Romantasy, I had written so much over the last 6 to 8 weeks that my carpal tunnel syndrome, I developed carpal tunnel syndrome and have had to wear a wrist brace, which I've had to remember to take off when I use the bathroom, which is probably TMI, but this is where we're at. This is the writer life. We're peeling the veil back. Okay. We're peeling the veil back. All right. And as soon as I finished that, I was like, I need to take a break from writing. That was a lot. That was a lot. Building out that world, and there's still so much work to do on it, but building out that world in particular, that was a lot. And then the next day, my brain was like, I don't know, I've got another idea though. And writing now has just become like, I can't imagine a day without a little bit of it, like a little tinkering away at a story. And that's what I'm doing right now with my Shakespeare academic romance. And just taking it slow and being really methodic about it, because I know that I can write plenty of words. Word count is not my issue. And I don't know where I was going with that, honestly, but my writing routine is better than ever. And that is really just because I had to do it, and now it's just a habit. And always and forever, I'm happy to answer questions about writing routines, but there's no special sauce to it. It really is like, you got to sit down and do it. You got to figure out the time of day that you like the best. You got to figure out what's going to be helpful for you as a writer, but it's really just sitting down to do the thing. And then at some point, it's going to become a habit. Like, there's not a day that goes by where I'm not going to eat breakfast and I'm not going to have my coffee. And now there's not a day that goes by where I'm not going to write at the same time as doing all of that. And I think once you build that routine, that is where a lot of creativity comes from, because at some point, if you want to be a career author, you're going to be writing stories when you don't have the muse descending upon you. Like Clara Thorne was inside of me somewhere and needed to get out. And then the other stories I've written since then have that element to them, sure, but there's also an element of like, well, this is on a deadline as well. This has another ruling entity that I need to make sure that I am aware of, and that's its own journey. But I don't think that has to zap creativity. I think sometimes it might, but I don't think so. In a lot of respects, I think it helps promote creativity in a different way, because if you're going to make a career out of creativity, you're not always going to have the moment of inspiration befall you every single time you do stuff. And I think because I'm an actor, I'm uniquely set up to be able to accept that. And because, I act every single day. I perform 8, sometimes 9 shows a week. And not every performance, I'm thinking this is the end all be all. This is it. I am tapped in, because we're like on our 100th show. And I'm like, look, I'm just trying to get through this. Okay? I'm trying to be cool and nice. So what else do I have to say to you? What else do I have to say to you all? I didn't note anything down before I started this. I sort of sat down and was writing something, and then I saw my mic and I was like, the podcast. We can come out. It's the podcast. It's April 9th. It's time for the podcast. So I'm really excited to be back. I'm really excited to be recording. I'm excited for this season. I'm excited to talk about Whimsy Forward stuff. We're going to talk about gardens and writing, and I just am feeling extra cozy, at least for the next few weeks to a few months. Who knows what'll happen? Maybe at some point I'm like, and now this is the chapter of monster smut and hardcore everything. But for the next few weeks, especially during spring, it's going to be nice and cozy. It'll be a lot of updates about garden stuff, but I'll try to do it in such a way that, like, if you all have questions as writers about what is it like to launch a book, I'll try to explain the process. And it's not just like blanket updates, but like, let me show you behind the scenes of things, because there's so much mysteriousness around this thing that can be very, not momentous or whatever. So thank you all for your patience, as Anyway is getting back up on its feet. And I will see you next week. Get your copy of the book. Bye.